Hello and welcome from us. Coming up shortly, after years of rising youth crime, new figures show a significant fall over the last 12 months. So how's it been done, and have we turned a corner? Joining me this week, Karen Buck, Labour MP for Westminster North, and Mike Freer, the Conservative MP for Finchley and Golders Green. Welcome to you both. And let's start, if we can, with imminent benefit changes and the fact that if you have spare rooms, you are going to lose a benefit. The Housing Federation saying this week could affect 80,000 people in London. An issue for you, Mike?
Well, I haven't seen where those figures have come from. Certainly my borough, Barnet, I think the figure is looking at around about 600. And Barnet is one of the biggest boroughs. And having spoken to Barnet Homes, they feel that it's actually quite manageable because there's an awful lot of misinformation and slightly scarce stories going around. There is a problem with overcrowding and there is a problem with under-occupation, and it's about how it's managed. And so certainly people like Barnet Homes are trying to be proactive. They're knocking on doors, they're talking to people about their options of downsizing and helping them through home swap, finding more suitable
accommodation. Are you fully behind the principle?
I think in principle it's right. I think it's not right that those who buy in the private sector, rent in the private sector or get housing benefit to live in the private sector don't get the subsidy for a spare room, whereas those who live in pure social housing do. So it is a matter of putting some fairness into the whole equation. It's how it's implemented that will be the key issue.
Karen, just about implementation?
Well, what we've got, of course, is a huge number of households who will be losing as a result of the bedroom tax and virtually no homes for them to move into. So it's surprising to hear Barnet say that they will be able to deal with this. I mean, Westminster won't be able to move the overwhelming majority of families who are who will be affected by this. And of course, what it means is if you are unable to move, if you want to move to try and avoid the cut in your benefit, you could lose £15 a week out of your, say, £70 a week job seekers allowance, and you will be stuck potentially for years wanting to move and not being able to. And this is a story in London. It's the whole national story. There are 750,000 households who are going to lose because of this benefit tax, or this bedroom tax. Most of them are in the north of England. London is not the worst affected. The overcrowding is in London. The spare bedrooms are in the north of England, and no one has yet explained how they're going to match the two up. OK, let's move on. Now, one of the mayor's key priorities when he was first elected was to tackle serious youth violence. For most of his mayoralty, the figures have remained static, but the latest statistics show the number of offences has fallen sharply. In some boroughs, Stephen Greenhalgh is here, Deputy Mayor for Policing. Welcome to you. Is it a freak, is this a blip, or have we turned a corner?
Well, I think we're at the first stage of recognising the problem and having effective enforcement, but clearly there's more work to be done. We do need to think about how you're going to get effective prevention and stopping people getting into that life in the first place. But equally, those that do want to make the leap and encourage more of them to exit the gang culture, that's another area where we need to do more work.
But how did we get the figures down so dramatically? They look like they are down fairly dramatically.
You have to recognise the achievements of Trident. First of all, just recognising a little over a year ago that this is a serious problem that's blighting the streets of London, ensuring that we focus on enforcement, targeting those gang chiefs, if you like, that are effectively driving the culture. That's been an important first step. But now we've got to build on the successful programmes that we're seeing bloom across London and ensure that we keep more young people away from that.
What are you talking about when you say successful programmes, or looking at what's happening in someone like Westminster?
I'm seeing. I mean, I've been taken through the Your Choice, the programme, the whole approach to gang recovery. When I was leader of Hammersmith Fulham, we had a street outreach service which has done some good work. There are great charities from St Giles's Trust and XLP. But what you're seeing are different interventions and different things work in different parts of London. And I think this is one of those areas where you do need to work alongside boroughs to sort the problem out.
The things that haven't worked, and we can see that we may have started targeting some of the existing serious offenders and gang members, but in terms of the mentoring project, in terms of what you did at Feltham, which didn't look after or deal with the most serious offenders. I mean, what good has any of that done to prepare the way to stop reoffending?
Well, first of all, we've got to understand the extent to which this agenda agenda is driven from City Hall today, and we've made representations that we should have far greater oversight over youth justice. At the moment, that's driven by the Youth Justice Board. What I think has happened in the first term is a recognition of what's missing in order to stop this ridiculous revolving doors of crime, where around 83% of young people exiting custody go on to reoffend. So I think the need for resettlement brokers, the need to think about issues around mentoring, we've proven that that's important, but it's got to go beyond that, because I was struck by the failure to have mental health provision or counselling for some of these people, and clearly, you know, that's more to be done.
But back on enforcement, is the Trident gang, is this structure absolutely preserved with the same budget, the same staffing under all your radical overhaul of the policing at the moment?
Gangs and serious youth violence remains an absolute priority of the Mayor's Office of Policing and Crime and also the Met Police. The gangs Trident's unit continues. The one change is when it comes to homicide, and these are small in number, that will be investigated by that's proposed to be investigated by the homicide team. But yes, the unit continues to do its work, but by freeing that up, they're going to get more resource on the upstream work on preventing the problems happening in the first place, which I think is the right way to go.
Karen Buck, Westminster, you know, your patch, have you been satisfied with what you've seen? I mean, the figures seem to speak for themselves.
Yes, although it's worth remembering that the levels of serious youth violence actually rose by 60% the year before, so it's not taking anything away from the achievement. And I think that the local team, and we saw Matt Watson, the leader of the team, on the film, and I think he is superb, and I think he's leading a really good team, and they are doing very, very good work indeed. But the fact is that the problem is not over. I mean, we had just on the streets of Pimlico this spring, we had Hani Olkia murdered. We've had 3 teenagers murdered on the streets of London, and we don't know whether the problem is resolved. There's an issue about serious sexual violence against girls, which is something that is a very great concern to us. But the other thing that we really don't know is how much of the fall that we have seen in youth violence is to do with the very dramatic levels of incarceration following the riots, and indeed some of the Trident and Met operations last year. Now, I don't want a risk at all of young people coming out of offenders' institutions, where there's already a problem with gang culture within those institutions, and finding that a year down the road, we're getting these problems surging back.
Mike?
Well, I've met the head of the gangs team, and actually it's a very impressive operation. And having these centres of excellence who can actually pull it all together across London, as well as backing up local resource, I think is a major improvement and is clearly paying off. And the other thing I'd also say that, you know, Stephen's reforms of actually spending less on bricks and mortar and more on bobbies on the beat will also help underpin a fall in crime.
Well, so once you lose the intelligence, of course, because you're losing some of the very localised, say for neighbourhood teams, you're losing a lot of PCSOs and whatever. Do you have a concern there?
Actually, we're not. I mean, basically, you will lose bricks and mortar, but you will not lose SNTs and you will not lose bobbies on the beat. Bricks and mortars and police officers do not, police stations do not gather intelligence. In my patch, my police station wasn't visited. What I did want is more police officers, warranted officers on the beat, and that's what I'm getting.
And surely the trend, the downward trend, will continue in your patch, Karen, if police stations and front coaters are closed there as well.
Well, I mean, in one sense, I agree with Mike. I mean, I think the critical thing is to have a police presence in the community, and the issue is not so much about exactly where the counters are going to be, although there's a big question about how they're going to operate, but where the safer neighbourhood teams are going to be operating from and where their bases are going to be in the community. At the moment, Stephen is proposing to close the Harrow Road police station. The St John's Wood police station is closed. We don't know where these teams are going to be operating from. We also know
they're going to be piled high. Let's ask Stephen. They're going to be piled high. Westminster's one place, but it's applicable everywhere.
I think we've got to separate once and for all the issue of front counter access, where you're literally tying up hundreds and hundreds of warranted officers to see very few members of the public, from where you have police stations and also those spokes, if you like, for neighbourhood deployment. I accept the comments from both people that you don't want long travel times to deploy neighbourhood teams. We'll get a deployment plan that works for every part of the borough, but what we're saying is we've got to have a new approach to front counter access, and the old approach simply doesn't make sense.
You are weakening the safer neighbourhood teams by making them much larger and not ward-based. A lot of people are very, very unhappy about that.
Well, I think we've got to accept, and you'd accept that, you know, with both of you with your backgrounds in local government, not all wards across London are the same. This is providing the flexibility, more resource to put the police officers into the places where they can prevent crime happening in the first place.
More on this very soon, when presumably the completed proposals after this consultation you've been done will be before us very shortly, presumably. End of the month?
Looking at the end of the month.
You were about to say it's all happening, weren't you there?
It's all about to happen.
Great, thanks very much indeed, Stephen. The Mayor says he wants to see the number of cyclists in the capital double over the next decade, but with growing concerns about safety, how will more people be tempted to get on their bikes? City Hall hopes a series of measures outlined this week will provide the answer. Jennifer Conway has some of the detail. This Crossrail for bikes, this Westway, how much is that going to cost?
We're thinking about not a huge amount of money. The biggest ticket item is the bridge. We're talking in the tens of millions for that. There's going to be in order to cross the West Cross route to get up onto the A40 flyover, we're going to need a new bike and pedestrian bridge across the West Cross route. That's something.
What do you think then in total? And you've got to complete 15 miles of segregated cycle. How much ballpark?
The ballpark budget for the East-West Superhighway is in the high tens of millions, but that includes the bridge over the West Cross route, which is going to be the most expensive ticket item of it. A lot of the rest is actually relatively cheap. And the point about cycling improvements is that that it delivers enormous amounts of transport bang for the buck. On the tube lines beneath it, it's going to carry about 1,000 cyclists an hour on the Victoria Embankment, that segregated track we're putting in, and that is equivalent to about 4 entire carriage loads, 4 entire train loads of tube passengers on the lines beneath.
One of the key parts of the route, Victoria Embankment. Now, we understand that Westminster don't like that idea. They don't like the blue, for starters, and it's a conservation area. You haven't got this signed up yet, have you?
We are not doing the blue. There's blue in that video graphic you showed. That's just because there wasn't time to remove it. But if you'll notice on the still we gave you, that wasn't blue. It's not going to be blue.
After objections?
Yes, indeed. And it's because we've consulted with Westminster and they've told us they don't like the blue that we're taking it off. And they are actually remarkably signed up. I don't know if you noticed.
Signed up to the actual segregated part.
If you know, yeah, that part is on our road. The Victoria Embankment is owned by Transport for London, not Westminster Council. But if you notice in the press release accompanying it, there's a very supportive quote from Westminster's Cabinet Member for Transport, Ed Arger, with whom I've discussed this at length, and also there's support from Philippa Rowe, the leader of the council. That's going to be fine.
The other 8 superhighways that haven't been done now, are they going to still go ahead?
We're going to recast the superhighways, which might mean rerouting some of them.
Recast, but are we still going to get 12?
We're going to get the same number, but they're not all going to be in the same places.
Right. Are they going to be segregated with the pavement between the cyclists, protecting the cyclists on the road?
No, not all of them. As the document explains, the vision explains, there are some places we will segregate and other places we can't because of the buses. Unlike Amsterdam, London has a very dense bus network, and the danger of putting a segregated lane is that it has to go between the bus and the pavement, and everyone who steps off the bus...
You've recognised and accepted with the centrepiece here, the Crossrail bike, that the ideal is segregation.
Well,
but you're not going to guarantee the superhighways are going to be that. The superhighways seem to have been flawed. Why carry on with a flawed model?
I was going to say that all the superhighways are going to be improved, but as the document makes quite clear, we can't do segregation on all of them because there are buses. Now, the reason why we've chosen the Victoria Embankment is there are no bus routes along that stretch. There are no bus routes along the Westway, so we can do full segregation. In other places where there are buses, like Stratford High Street, for instance, we can do it by putting what are called floating bus stops or island bus stops out in the carriageway. Passengers then step off to the island to avoid conflict with cyclists.
Let me bring the other 2 in here. Is this going to get you to use your bikes?
Well, I think, as we know, the big concern is around safety, and if this vision helps us deliver a safer passage for London cyclists, then I think it's great. I mean, I celebrate the vision. I mean, I think one of the big worries is whether this it was spun on earlier in the week as being a best part of £1 billion investment. Of course, most of that is not funded, and the question will be whether that can be delivered in the long run.
Has it? But Mike Freer, also, you're getting a superhighway from Barnet?
We're not, which is a shame because I'm a keen cyclist. I do cycle into Westminster.
You never know, Mike.
Tory MP.
I'm pleased to see that you are improving Swiss Cottage, which is a bit of a Russian roulette when I cycle through.
There's going to be a superhighway through Swiss Cottage, and as for the money, I mean, obviously it's as guaranteed as anything else in the TfL business plan. Nothing in the TfL business plan.
It's just not enormously more than has been out there.
It's dramatically more. It was going to be 273 million over 10 years. It's now 913 million. So there's 2.5 times more, dramatically more, Tim.
Okay. Mike Freer, the Mayor, got it in the ear over Lewisham. I mean, all kinds of controversy, growing controversy over a configuration of health. This is a really difficult one.
Health is always very difficult because no one likes change. Everyone wants a major hospital on their doorstep. The key issue in A&E is these days it's much more technical. You have to have access to major experts on, neurosurgery and plastics, and not every A&E can have that. It's important to ensure that localities can have major walk-in centres and urgent treatment centres on their doorstep, but it's always fraught when you're changing
Is this in the time left? It's about 30 seconds. Is this A&E configuration destined to fail?
Yeah, I think the real issue is will the NHS be able to deliver in London alternatives, whether that's the investment in primary care, the investment in walk-in specialist centres, the London Ambulance Service? There are real questions about that. People are rightly fearful about whether the alternatives will be in place.
OK, well, to you both, thanks very much indeed. Great to see you, Mike Freer and Karen Buck.